Today we have Luna Davis, Brianna McIntyre, Meena Matai, and Cary Reeder. We'll get started today with Meena Matai.
Hello, can you everybody hear me? Yeah, okay. Hi, my name is Meena Matai, and I'm a local artist here in Austin. Thank you, Women in Their Work, for having me, and thank you everybody for joining and listening to our talks. I'm gonna share my screen to get us started. You can see my screen. Okay. So let's see. Today, I'm specifically going to be talking about a new exhibition that I have ongoing at the Doherty Art Center. It's called The Other Side, and it's about the Pakistan and India partition that happened in 1947. They used to actually be two countries, and at the end of British colonialism, when the British left, they divided it into two countries, and it caused the biggest human mass migration known in human history. Um, it impacted 15 million people, and some of those people were my family, my grandparents on both sides. So, this exhibition is about collecting stories from my family and sharing them through my art. So, I want you to just take a moment and think about home. Maybe some of you are at home right now. Maybe some of you are away from your home. Just for a moment, I'm going to say this, and this might seem like a traumatic experience. Uh, you're not allowed to go back home. All the things that you have at home are not yours anymore. Everything that you have on you right now is all you have. Take that and move. That is pretty much the refugee experience. Not just what happened in 1947 to 15 million people, but it's happened to people all over the world in Taiwan, in Bhutan, in Sudan, Egypt, um, Germany, Europe, everywhere, happening right now in Ukraine. Um, so I was hit with this news when my father passed away all of a sudden in 2017. um, I realized that a lot of these stories are going to get lost because he's the one who used to share some stories with us, even though he was only 3 years old. He during the partition when it happened, but he still had some recollection of what had happened because of the trauma, the generational trauma. So I'll share one story with you that kind of kickstarted this whole body of work. This piece is called "Take My Keys." When the mob was coming to attack the village that my grandparents lived in, it was also sudden that my grandfather thought that, oh, this is just going to be temporary. We're just going to leave to a peaceful place for some time and then we're going to come back home. So they took all my grandmother's jewelry, some cash, and all that, and put it in a box and put it in the baseboards uh, in the house, buried it, gave the keys to the neighbor. And my grandfather said, "Take my keys. I will come back." And they parted with a hug, and he never got to go back. So, or anybody from our family never got to go back. So this piece is called "Take My Keys," and it kickstarted this body of work. Um, and it has a lot of detail. I'm trying to play to the narrative with the ridges of the gold lines and the boundaries of the black lines, and a lot of laborious work because I wanted to think about very intentionally what it means to them when or what it might have meant to them when it was such a sudden and traumatic experience. It's been 75 years since the partition happened in 1947, coming up on 76. I really wanted to do something with the number 75, and so I created 75 of these small paintings, one for each year, and also to capture the range of emotions that those people who lived through it and people who are living through it right now might have experienced. Um, the but also to capture the sheer resilience and hope that they might have carried with them. So the 75 pieces here on the right show a fragmented time, and this piece here is called Cohesive Time on the left, and it captures the fact that the only thing that has a pattern is time. We can try to fit together all the pieces and try to construct something, but really, when there is so much trauma and so much pain, all we can really do is try and learn from it. Um, I will quickly share a video of how this installation of the 75 pieces was done. So I hope you can see the video. So I first put this paper on the wall and marked where the nails were gonna go, put the hooks, then ripped the paper off to keep the 75 nails and hooks, and then basically installed each of them. So before doing this, this is at the Doherty, I actually had it laid out at home on a wall so that I knew exactly where I was going to do it. And then there I am feeling happy about that. So it's also been quite a um, fun experience in, installing and learning new things. There I am just to give you an idea of scale of these pieces. Um, I think I have another couple seconds to share one more story. So the geography of where my family moved from and to is through the Great Indian Thar Desert, and it's full of sand dunes. So this piece is me, was inspired from me looking in Google Maps to figure out the road that the bus might have traveled on. And, like I'm zooming into Google Maps and I see that it's surrounded by sandy desert on both sides. So I was trying to capture the the travel of the families who might have traveled through the sand dunes like my family. And I mean, the amount of courage it must have taken for them to leave everything behind and move to a new place with barely anything. And I was trying to capture even a little bit of hope that they might have held on to, uh, moving to a completely new place. So I would love to invite all of you to my exhibition at the Doherty. It runs through May 20th, but there is a talk next Friday on April 7th, and it's it's going to be a really powerful talk. There is this organization called 1947 Partition Archive. They since this generation that went through the partition um, is dying, a lot of the stories that are on the verge of being lost. So this organization archives and preserves these stories, and they're coming out with their very first book in which they've captured some 10,000. Well, the book has some stories, but not all the 10,000 stories. But the founder of the organization and another professor called Dr. Amarjeet Singh and myself, we're going to give a talk on April 7th. And it's not just about the India Pakistan partition, it's about colonialism and the state of the refugees and what we have to learn from history. We need to look back on the past to see where we came from to hopefully understand where we're going. We will post this link to the Eventbrite. The talk is free, and you don't even actually have to RSVP. Just come. I would love to see some of you there. And yeah, if you let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Meena. Next up, we have Cary Reeder.
Hi, everyone. I want to first thank Women in Their Work for inviting me. And Meena, thank you for that. That was really moving and beautiful and meaningful. My husband came here as a Cuban refugee, so I understand that refugee experience, and you really portrayed it in a very beautiful way. Um, I have some slides I'm going to show, but I first wanted to give you a little bit of background about me. I'm based in Houston. I've been in Houston for probably 26 years, I think, but I grew up in South Florida. I come from a family of artists. So my mother was an artist, craft artist. My sister Joan Babcock is an artist, and my niece Anna Garosco is an artist. So it's something that runs in the family, and also is it's not weird to be artistic in our family. It's something that's always been encouraged. Um, so my art is inspired by nature. I find a lot of inspiration going on walks in my neighborhood. So I guess it's urban nature. Um, but I like to capture these ephemeral moments that only if you're noticing you see them. So I look at the ground a lot, cast shadows, which can appear and disappear in no time. And I like to convey that in my work, not in a literal way, but to just give viewers a sense of kind of memory or something that's fleeting. Um, not to get too deep, but everything in life is fleeting. Just from hearing Mina's story about her artwork. Um, and it's not something you think about when you're younger, but as you grow older, you do start to think about how things are fleeting. The other thing I really love to include in my artwork and focus on is color. So I was interested in color several years ago. That's always been something I've loved. But about 10 years ago, I started teaching color theory at Art League here in Houston. And that only made me even more obsessed with color. So color plays a big role in my artwork. I like to how colors interact, and I like to create subtle optical illusions. Okay, I'm going to share my screen and go through some of my slides. All right. So 2022 for me started out good. I had had open heart surgery the year before, and I was feeling good, and I thought, okay, I'm ready to get back into it. So I had a bunch of paintings planned, um, lots of ideas. So the first painting of the year I did was this one called Revival. And what I wanted to do with this painting is to kind of present the idea of a gauzy overlay of a tree against a bold background of colors, and also just create some subtle interactions, or not interactions, but optical illusions where it looks like it's overlaying on the color field. This one is called Take Me Back in Time Again. It's also a Sarah Jarrow song that you should go listen to. But when I was working on this, I would have been thinking a lot about growing up in South Florida in the 1970s, and the colors of that time. They're always such bold graphics, and then just South Florida itself is very color. They don't shy away from using color, as I've been told that I don't shy away from using color. And I wanted to give that kind of feeling, that sense of the 70s. This painting is, I call it my subliminal painting. After my heart surgery, all I wanted to do was get well. It was kind of traumatic. I had open heart surgery unexpectedly, and I wanted to just get better, move on with my life, and forget about it. But it somehow worked its way, my experience worked its way into my artwork. So this is called Mended. I started painting it and realized it looked like a heart. This was not intentional, believe me. Um, Here's another from that series. This is called Immerse. I was also trying to wanting to play with color and do this overlay effect. This is Noir. I was trying to get a spotlight, kind of a night scene of trees, which is kind of hard to capture, but I wanted to shine a spotlight on these trees at night. And this painting is a good example of me using shadows on the ground as reference. Um, just you don't notice it until you notice it, and it's um, I probably have thousands of photos on my phone of just shadows on the ground that I want to interpret and really give me a good groundwork for making paintings. So this one is on board with gold pen. And okay, so the year was going pretty well, although I was hospitalized in February. And then in May, I broke my right wrist, which is my dominant hand. And that was my friend said, you're just making this up. You just want to get attention now. But no, I really broke my right wrist. I had to take a break from painting with it. But I still went back into the studio and worked on these acrylic on paper paintings. And something that came out of it were these kind of monster-like creatures. And I was thinking that my body is going haywire, and there are these monsters in there creating all these, wreaking havoc and creating problems. And also some of them kind of mimic the inflatable tube guy that you see on the street. For some reason, it kind of describes what I've been going through, this flailing with my health. So before the surgery, I found out that I was going to be commissioned to do a big sculpture as part of True North, the Heights Boulevard sculpture project. This is in the Heights on Heights Boulevard, and every year they commission 9 artists to create a sculpture. So I was very honored to.
Oh, she did that? That's nice.
I was very honored to be invited to do this. And it's one of these things where the artwork did exactly what I wanted it to do. I wanted it to create its own pools of color and designs that move throughout the day. I could talk about this for a while, but I know we're limited. But please look at my website. I have a lot more pictures. It even turned into a terrarium at one point. So you never knew what was going to happen, but it was a really fun project. Okay, so now the not so fun. At the end of December, I have a studio at Winter Street, or had a studio at Winter Street Studios. And there was an arson fire there. I think a lot of people know about this. It destroyed 3 studios downstairs from mine, but sent soot and smoke throughout the entire building. So every artist who had artwork in the building was affected. So I've been spending the last 3 months recovering from that fire. These 3 works here that I'm showing, they're all destroyed. And ironically, one of them was used in the promo for this talk. But those are destroyed. 3 other smaller kind of studies, they were destroyed, but the vast majority of my work I've been able to clean up. It's fine, and I've gotten a lot of help from one thing I did that it took me a while to do this. I did a GoFundMe. In the beginning, I said, no, I don't need to do that. I'm going to have insurance money. I can handle it. But I really, really, if you have a disaster, whether you think so or not, just let your friends help you. People want to help. That's one thing I learned is let people help you. Um, and so I'm just about recovered. I'm just about cleaned up everything, and I found a new studio, and I hope to get working there soon. Um, One thing I did though was to as a gift to myself for going through all this health and fire nonsense was to give myself a gift of a workshop. So I signed up for a screen printing workshop. It was digital to analog, so we did a lot of designing on Photoshop, and then did the analog version. As you can see from my work, screen printing, I love. It's very often people ask me if my work is screen printed. So I love these blocks of color and things like that. So that's the latest thing. So some of my stuff that I've talked about is a little stale. I know this is fresh from the studio, but this is my newest stuff, and hope to be getting back to work soon. So thank you.
Thank you, Cary. Thanks so much. Next up, we have Brianna McIntyre.
I've heard a lot of pronunciations of my last name, but never Morgan. That's a new
Never
one.
Morgan.
All good. Thank you so much, Diane and Women in Their Work, for this opportunity to share what I'm working on right now. And also thank you to all the artists who are here and for being so vulnerable and sharing so much. What you're sharing and your stories are touching me deeply. And so I'm going to get started. So I'm Brianna McIntyre. I am an artist that is based out of Austin as well as St. Louis, Missouri. I am from St. Louis originally. My partner and I, we have been doing collaborative work together where we are working on public art initiatives, which has been really exciting. It's something new for my practice. Typically, I'm very much in the studio. My background of my work is more fiber and materials artwork, as well as sculpture, and also furniture design and interior architecture. So I have kind of like left brain, like right brain kind of going at it, where it's like very logical. I got to make this function. And another side of me is I just want to make it beautiful and, and make an impact. So I'm going to get started on my presentation. Okay. Can everyone see?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the name of our, I don't know. Let me see if I can. I don't know if that's like going to be in the way. That'll be better. Okay. So the name of our initiative and our collaborative is Occupy Vacancy. And that is a name that we came up with to talk about the vacancy that is prevalent in St. Louis, Missouri, particularly on the north side. So we use city-owned lots, or actually LRA lots. So the LRA is a land bank. And there are many land banks that are established throughout our country, but St. Louis had the first land bank because it experienced significant urban decline after the turn of the century. And many of the land, much of the land is concentrated on, this is us. So this is me and my partner. His name is Andre Fuqua. He is also an artist and engineer. We are both from St. Louis, but also work inside of Austin as well. And we really had a passion for just telling the story and collecting memory of, the architecture as well as the stories of families that have left the north side of St. Louis. So yeah, so St. Louis and vacancy. So this is a really great map that just kind of puts into context, the amount of vacant lots and vacant buildings that are prevalent in St. Louis, particularly on the north side. And there's a particular street in St. Louis named Delmar Boulevard, which is kind of that line which marks the north side of St. Louis and the south side of St. Louis. And that also indicates a lot of wealth and resources that are available to people. So the green dot here is where our project is. We're in the Vandervender neighborhood. We have so far installed one sculpture, but we are acquiring 3 lots. Okay, and then this is just another great iteration of understanding the discrepancy and the differences in terms of wealth, education, and resources that are along Delmar Boulevard. This is some of our research. So something that you would not know unless you're from St. Louis is that the north side actually has some of the most beautiful architecture in the city. It's the oldest part of the city. And unfortunately, because of the migration from the urban center to the county, which has been separated from St. Louis City, a lot of homes have experienced decline, vacancy. And as someone who is from St. Louis, I'm very aware of this, and it really has always kind of hurt my heart to see that, because I think I always see a lot of potential. And I was very grateful to have an opportunity to address this problem. So the first iteration that we did was a brick sculpture called Right of Location. So Right of Location came about because we wanted to create a sculpture that would speak directly to the interests and the hearts of St. Louisans. St. Louis is a brick city. Our brick is all over the country. That's because of our red clay. It's what we're known for, and a lot of the buildings use it. So we wanted to have a piece that kind of stamped and started this project that would be a really great entry point for people that are in the city and as well as outside to also just appreciate the craft and the architectural history of the city. So we used motifs and features that we scanned from around the neighborhood and try to abstract those and create what will eventually be a public sculpture kind of park. So this is a quick video. This is when we were just getting started. That's Andre with the hose. We're actually using water from a neighbor. We asked him, once we had to, talk to people and just explain our mission. And that was the biggest part, just getting support. This is another great video of us doing a concrete pour. I love this video because this is Mr. Dan. He is an expert at what he does, and he was funny. He drew a little smiley face in our concrete base. Of course, he smoothed that out later. But it was a great example of community coming together, because it would not have been possible if we had not been able to use water from our neighbor. When we talked to the neighbor, and whose name is Corey Alexander, we call him Mr. Corey, he again just expressed his experience of living on that block, of kind of sticking around and seeing all of the changes that have happened, but also showing his support by allowing us to use his water as well as looking out for us while we built this project, which took around, from start to finish, around 2 weeks. If we were going from concrete pour to the finished product. So here's just some more progress shots of this project. We also worked with a local mason, someone who I've known for years, actually decades, who has his own business now, who helped supervise the build and made sure that we were doing everything technically correct. Here's a little video. I like that video just because it shows that we as artists were really interested in doing the work ourselves. We could have just hired someone to be like, hey, can you build this? But that's not what we're about. That's not what I'm about. My artistic practice is heavily based in craft. So I always want to be using my hands. So this was a great experience to use a very low tech technology and building material and technique, but try to create something that felt abstract, new, and memorialize people's experience. So some of the design behind it, and this is from our opening day, we had some neighbors come out. Actually, one of the neighbors right here, their family has lived on that block for over 100 years. And, we wanted to talk to them more about, just what they've seen. And what we loved about this design is that it has this impression that shows the kind of like the plus marks recessed on one side and protruding on the other. And that's just to show the divide of the city when it comes to resources and economic opportunity. This is a shot right here of it next to a building that had recently, within the time period that we had acquired the buildings, acquired the land through the LRA, which is the Land Reutilization Authority. Forgive me, I forgot to tell you that acronym, but that particular building was actually a 19th century building. It was the oldest building on the block, but since we built the piece, it had actually since been torn down. So this is a great shot, aerial shot of right of location, which is right here. And then this is where the next piece is gonna go. Then we're gonna just show. Yeah, so this was a crazy experience stumbling across this demolition. It was totally by accident. Of course, since we made the piece, I have frequently checked on it. It just so happened that one of the days that I checked on it, they had started to demolish the building next to it, which was incredibly sad. And again, just speaking towards the emotional impact and the social and emotional ecosystem that is impacted when buildings are torn down and stories and materials are removed. So really what we're trying to do is take those materials, take those stories, and historicize them and it's people's experience in the form of public art. So here's just another zoomed out image. And, to this day, it's still empty. It's still dangerous. What they do is they just essentially push all the brick in the poured foundation and then cover it up. Here's another shot of that. And they got very close to the sculpture, which was also very scary. Okay, so future plans. So future plans is we plan to make the next iteration of sculpture projects for Occupy Vacancy. This is going to be called The Neighbors. So The Neighbors was actually the original idea that we proposed when we were going for grant funding. And now it's time to circle back to the original form of which we wanted to install. So from the front, you can see it looks like a normal door, kind of floating door. From the back, we want to have this mirrored effect to kind of allow the user, once they engage the artwork, to see themselves in the art and see themselves in this space. As someone who has experienced displacement through natural disaster, I know what it feels like to look at an empty lot and remember what used to be there. Remember all of the parties, remembering, all of the family events, so many things that have happened that, that have unfortunately been removed. And I think one of the biggest components of this project is to instill empathy with people who don't have that experience. Can they put themselves in the space of someone who has experienced looking at a home or a place where they no longer can live? So that was some of the visual kind of background with that. And then here's like a rendering, a drawing that we did originally. Yes, so again, we are here to just envision a new future. We really want to create long-term, make these into really beautiful garden spaces where people can relax, they can activate them, they can read, just so that people can feel like they have something that's theirs. St. Louis also really loves their park systems. So I thought it would be a great chance to create a park system that's very specialized for that particular block. It's kind of like a block takeover and, just give something back. Something else about St. Louis is that we have a lot of free art. All of our museums, our zoos are free. So this is also just in line with the philosophy that's already been established in the city to create access to art. And this is, our website, our Instagram, as well as our email. And, and that is my presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And last up, we have Luna Davis.
Hello, give me 1 second. Okay, so hi, I'm Luna. I was born and raised in Austin, Texas here. I just graduated with my bachelor's degree in fine art at UT, and I was also a transfer student from ACC. Just for some context, I also work in mixed media. So I mostly do a lot of sculpture. I work with wood, metal. I do a lot of laser cutting. I do silk screen, and I do video and photo a lot of the time. Can y'all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Cool. So a lot of topics I tend to talk about are mostly in domestic spaces, and I like to kind of think of them as like places memories are made or where emotional energy is stored, and it can be good and bad and gray, and that's kind of what I mostly like to talk about. I also like to talk about internet and like glitchingness, and also personas and identity sort of fit in there. I feel like a lot of going back to the domestic spaces, I feel like a lot of my personal experiences I capture in that, and I also find that there's a lot of universal things that we as humans share, and I think it's my goal to kind of share what's going on in my life and kind of reflect and hope that people find a community where they don't feel alone. And with that being said, so in high school, I started making these things called the rooms, and they're basically just foam board cut out and just hot glued together, and I would Photoshop images and I would cut them out, and I would have to scale them down and physically fit them in a room. I don't know why I started doing this. I just think I really like working with interiors and spaces. And a lot of these are just random stories I made up. And then some of them were based on personal events, but I liked kind of getting my creative juices going with that. And then later on, when I started college, I had a few mentors, and they suggested that I start transitioning to a sculptural form, which made more sense. And I was very hesitant at the time, but I'm really glad I got pushed that way, because I love sculpture, and I'm really happy that I found it where I am. So these are just two stories I made up, and they have a lot of context, and you can kind of tell what stories are about in here based on like the frames inside of the room, and also there's other like clues in the space. And these were two other ones. The one on the right is called What Lies at Pinky's, and that one I made up a story about this lesbian bar that existed in New York, and there was like a portal that appeared, and people just went in, and nobody knew like what happened to them, but I was hoping it would be like a good thing, but I think that's for the viewer to interpret. So it's a lot of that. And then eventually I started doing life-size rooms, and this was always like a goal of mine. Like during college, I really wanted to make a life-size room, and this was kind of my sketch with that, and this is called Habituation. I made it last year for my senior thesis. And these were like my sketches I started with, because I had no idea how I was going to do this, and I was like, well, let me just start sketching it. And then eventually I started researching in like how movie sets are made, and we just use like MDF and some like 1x3s and just stapled and glued them together. And it's really just like you have to make it, and you just got to try to do it. And then this is what it ended up looking like. And all of the rooms I've done, I've only made 2 so far. They are based on personal events in my life, and they are very, very traumatic and vulnerable, but I think it's important to kind of share, and I find it as a way of like healing for myself too. So this project was about, I got in a relationship with someone who was abusing opioids, and at the time I was struggling with codependency. And if you know, codependency and like drug use do not mix well. And so I wanted to reflect my experience in dealing with all of that in a physical space and how I was feeling while I was going through that. It's a lot of like, you really care about somebody, but then you also don't want to be alone a lot of the time. But it's a lot of reflecting and feeling really, you know, sad, but then having to pull yourself together and be like, hey, it's okay, and you can get out of this and still wish this person well and stuff. So this was at the Visual Arts Center at UT last April. And then I proposed there's some more images. So I was mostly doing a lot of like static, and I felt like one feeling I was feeling was just kind of numbness. So I was trying to express that through static. And a lot of this is all silkscreen on the bottom of where the banner is. And I used a lot of imagery with like poppies, which are the origin of like opioid seeds and stuff. And kind of just eyeballs. I feel like eyes are very important to me and represent like anxiety and stress. And then I started using these TVs. They're called CRTVs, and they're from like, you know, like your early childhood if you grew up in the 90s or 80s and stuff. And I just made these 3 videos that would loop, where they would just be different shots of things, and some of them would cut out and some of them would continue. And then I wanted to talk about this a little bit more, because this process is very interesting, because this is all analog equipment, and it is not it's not digital at all. The only thing that's digital is recording the actual televisions. And basically how I'm doing this is there's my TV set up right here, and they're hooked into a video mixer, which is basically a thing to do transitions. So it'll be like a square moving forward or backwards. And then I have a video color corrector on the bottom, which is doing most of the work. And basically it's just distorting the signal coming from the screen to there, so that it's basically glitching it. So I'm talking about this mostly because it transitions to this piece. It's called You May Not Remember the Stars, but at least you know it's me. And this piece was proposed by me and my friend Mac and our friend Rowan right before I left school. And we proposed it through Center Space, through UT, and they liked our proposal. So this was what I installed, and this was installed from January to March this year. So it just came down. And this was about my relationship between my grandfather, who is he's kind of losing his memory, but he still remembers certain things, but not everything. And I like to compare his mind to like a glitch in a computer or a TV, and how there's some information still there, but it's not like as fluent as other people's minds work. And more shots. Oh, I had 3 channels of TVs going, and this was the main TV where I was glitching it and making footage and about him and his life, and also like what feelings I feel like knowing that he's going to be gone someday. And he's a very important figure in my life. So that's that. And this goes on for a while, but that's basically playing in one of the TVs, like right over here on the left side. And I made also these plates that were just things that I was also thinking, like the one on the right says, "Remember me, try your best." And I have silhouettes of both like my face and his face on the top above the mirror up here. Yeah. And then I also made my first book in school. It was called Elysium. And this is kind of where I was taking photographs of myself in different like eras and stuff, and I didn't really know why. I think my work comes really like intuitively. And so I just took a bunch of these photos, and then I knew I was going to make a book, and I was really interested in like glitch art and stuff. So I just put them all kind of together, and then I made this piece, and this is kind of more about the book, and it basically describes Elysium, where there's like 2 parts of it. It's like there's a place where it's like a paradise where heroes go when they die, and the other is riddled with mystery, but it's still it's described very like neutrally, but it's also pleasant. And basically I was taking this story of taking myself, and like if I got zapped in a computer, and having different identities through this process, while also like throughout the book it starts to glitch and question reality and like your identity through it. And then lately I've been learning how to laser cut, and I started a jewelry business on the side. And the piece on the right is actually going to be in the San Marcos studio tour, which is happening on Friday and Saturday this week from 12 to 6. And there's a whole map on it. But yeah, I'm starting to use laser cut in my work more. And yeah, and then this is where I work. Cool. I think we're out of time. Okay, so this is where to find me, and I want to say thank you to Women in Their Work for letting me do this. It means the world to me. Thanks.
Thank you, Luna.
Nice job, y'all. I really enjoyed seeing your studio processes as well as what you're working on. I've added everyone who's presented's Instagram as well as their website in the chat. And I think we're going to open it up to questions right now. I did see a question in this chat for Cary, sort of a technical question from Sat Nim, saying, "These colors are really gorgeous. What brand of acrylic gouache do you use?"
Oh, I think it's Holbein. I'm not sure, but I also use Golden has something called So Flat. Liquitex has stuff too. It's not that great, but just go to your local art supply store.
Nice. Cool. And I also kind of had a question, which I'm always curious with all artists, and especially since all of you spoke about working with themes that aren't always so positive, like the effects of geopolitical displacement, things that are going on in your personal life, personal traumas. And so I was wondering about how the process of creation, the creation of your own artwork, how that's emotionally affected y'all after sort of creating the piece, after showing it to people, and then moving forward to your next inspirations, how that process has emotionally affected y'all. Also, very cute cat, Brianna.
That was going to be
He
my
does this in every Zoom.
Well, I can just say that art's very therapeutic for me, and it's meditative, and it helps me deal with all the stuff that's thrown at all of us living life. So yeah, that's my take.
I agree. For my project in particular, I'm trying to not only heal my own emotions around the city, but also people who are interacting daily with these empty lots. And it's a very personal experience because it's not in, a commercial space or, in a public park. It's next to people's homes. So it's incredibly personal and it's very delicate how you approach this. But also remembering that in order to heal, you have to kind of confront the problem. But I think, artists do it in a way that is usually beautiful. We're usually trying to find beauty in something, and beauty is something that people are attracted to and allows them to work through the emotions. And, for me in particular, like this project is going to first have the sculpture and then eventually have like greenery and, park systems and benches so that people can like sit and meditate. And I think that it's okay to feel sad and then work through that and then find the beauty. Yes, Charlie. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I think being a artist, we use our art to tell our stories, and it actually inspires other people to come and share their stories. For example, when I started asking my mom, she told me that nobody has actually talked about this, and this was the first time that somebody was wanting to listen. And then she started telling me more and more, and then she said, yeah, this is actually a very therapeutic experience for me. And even my friends from different parts of the world who've experienced, or their families have experienced displacement, shared stories. Like I heard about a friend from Taiwan, and I didn't even know that, families there have experienced something similar. So uh, it not only is a therapeutic experience for us, but it inspires others to talk about their trauma and their generational trauma. And it's kind of a freeing process. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I agree too. It's kind of like, for me at least, I like to, when things are happening, I like to write a lot about how things are happening and then like putting that into creativity, and then having this weird effect where you're like processing it while you're also making work, and then you look back on it and you're like, that was a big part of my life, that was really important, and I learned a lot from that.
Nice. Thank you. Yeah, it was really cool to see how all this was represented in y'all's work and how it all is so different, but I was able to really relate in a way to every single one of y'all. But if anybody else has any questions, the artists or, oh yes, Brianna, go ahead.
Thank you. I had a question for Meena. Your themes are very powerful. And, I was feeling the emotion just when I was like, okay, here we go. We're getting started. So something that I picked up what you said, that you were talking about physical and emotional partition. And I was wondering how maybe you are thinking about exploring that more with, different mediums. I think I was wondering because I guess I'm curious if you've ever wanted to get into like sculpture or, try different ways to talk about it because it's so rich and layered. And there's so many ways to kind of circle this problem and kind of speak about it. And I'm just curious, what is your relationship to other mediums? And have you thought about exploring that?
You're giving me ideas. So no, I haven't explored sculpture outside of the canvas. I've worked with pins and piercing the canvas to install things on it, and cutting paper and kind of creating a 3D piece on top of the canvas. But I haven't explored outside of that. I would love to, uh, but I would need to educate myself on it and just try and see where it goes. Um, in terms of using my art to tell stories, I think we artists are very crafty. We create beautiful things, and the first impression of beauty attracts people. And then we bam, hit them with this really heavy topic uh, of a partition, of refugees, of displacement, of trauma and pain, and and honestly, this is the first time I've been courageous enough to put myself out there like this. In the past, I've always created my work for interior decoration and paintings that people hang in their homes. And yes, these are still paintings that people would hang in their homes, but this is the first time uh, I've embraced that vulnerability of putting the stories out there. So I'm just getting started.
Well, that's awesome. Please keep going.
Yeah, thank you.
I have a question for Brianna. I love the way you tackled gentrification because it's happening everywhere. I mean, where I live has been gentrified, and I've been I'm one of the people who gentrified it, I guess. Um, but I'm curious about what kind of events, and you may have talked about this, but what kind of events you have to attract people to see your sculptures from outside of the neighborhood?
Yeah, so that first opening was a soft opening for Right of Location. We actually had a talk at one of the universities locally, WashU University. And that was a really great opportunity to alert people outside of that direct kind of block about that. We have had conversations and talks with also like some galleries here. I think now what we want to do is try to create events around particularly like education and how we got the lots, because there's a lot of red tape and a lot of um, walls around kind of information and gatekeeping that information in order to even get those lots. When we were building the pieces, people would stop and say, "What are you doing? How did you do this?" Because people were back in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s trying to acquire lots to develop and do something. And there were so many roadblocks that people hit. So one of those ways that we could help is to just show how our process and how we did that. Another idea we had was to invite people to, maybe create art. Like there's a elementary school on that block. How can we instill creativity at a very young age and make that something that's as important as, learning math or science or English. You should learn how to tap into yourself and create. So I think that, and this has been about 2 years in the making. We're going to hit 2 years next month in terms of when we kind of start this project. So it's growing. And I think ideally, we want to create space for other people to do this as well. We want to create some kind of maybe a residency program where people are invited to kind of continue that conversation and think about development in a way in the perspective of an artist, not just slapping up some whatever kind of shoddy build so that you can rank in on the money. We're trying to beautify it in a way that we see fit and also that the neighbors see fit too. And I know from talking to them that they care about their youth and how can we involve them. So that's really on our hearts and how we can get young people interested in art.
That's great. Thank you.
I have a question for Cary. I was looking when you were showing your paintings and stuff. Have you ever worked digitally, like digitally painting? Because when I first saw them, they looked very digital, and I was very impressed by that.
Yeah, I actually I used to do the sketching and on the canvas and stuff like that. Now I have it down to a science. I use Procreate. I don't know if you know about that program, but it's on the
Yeah.
iPad, and I figure everything out on Procreate, the colors, values, everything, and then I project it on a board. And yeah, digital has become a big part of my work, and it's great because you can't, when you paint, it's hard to cover up mistakes. So, especially if you're painting really flat like that. So yeah, definitely.
Great. Well, thank you for those fantastic questions. As it goes past the hour time, I think we're gonna start wrapping things up. So I wanted to mention for events coming up, Meena has her talk, and then Luna, your San Marcos studio tour is coming up. Cary, Brianna, is there anything you guys wanted to pop in with, or we'll be looking forward to seeing things in the horizon for y'all?
I'm just
Yeah.
trying to get back to work in my studio. That's all I want. I don't have any events planned or anything like that.
Nice.
Glad everybody else.
So in August of this year, we should have the next iteration up. And then in the fall of next year, we should have a show actually in Austin at Ivester Contemporary. That's already been confirmed. So we'll be trying to kind of translate this message and bringing it to Austin from our perspective.
Sweet, very exciting. And then really quick from the Women on Their Work side, we have our current exhibition, Lindy Chambers, paintings and sculptures up until May 11th. Please stop by when you guys are in town or when you get the chance. We have our Sapphire Soiree coming up in April, late April. So that'll be a great celebration of our 45th anniversary. And then that's about it. Everyone, please stay tuned for our next edition. And I want to thank the artists again for fantastic presentations and beautiful artwork. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.